new skills. Laganap din po ang mga ulat na may seryosong pagkukulang ng mga school buildings sa buong bansa. Hindi po ito mariresolba sa madaling panahon, ngunit sinisimulan po natin ang mga hakbang para hindi na kailangan magklase sa construction site, sa ilalim ng puno o kung saan-saan pa po. Bukod sa minamandato natin ng DepEd na magsumite sa Kongreso ng listahan ng mga school buildings na itatayo pa lang at ng isang Basic Education Facilities Master Plan para masusi nating mabantayan kung lumilit nga ba ang classroom shortage. Pinapayagan din natin magrenta ang DepEd sa mga pasilidad ng mga pribadong paaralan na hindi ginagamit para punan ang anumang pagkukulang sa silid-aralan. Naging talamak din ang mga issue hinggil sa mental health ng ating mga mag-aaral habang nasa lockdown sila. Kaya tiniyak po natin sa panukalang budget na mag-iimplementa ang DepEd ng malawakang mental health policy for students and personnel alinsunod sa Mental Health Act or Republic Act 11036. Inaatasan din ng DepEd na magkaroon ng pool of registered guidance counselors at mental health program administrators na silang maghahanap at mag-iensayo ng mga guidance designates at peer facilitators sa mga paaralan. Maalala po natin, Mr. President, na bago pa tayong nagpandemya, lumabas ang mga ulat tungkol sa mababang performance ng ating mga mag-aaral sa PISA or Program for International Student Assessment at iba pang mga pag-aaral tungkol sa kalidad ng ating edukasyon. Lalong lumala ang problema nitong pandemya kung saan ayon sa World Bank naging malubha ang learning poverty sa bansa. 9 out of 10 daw ang mga 10-year-old students na hindi makapagbasa o nakakapag-unawa ng isang simpleng kwento o babasahin. Kaya nagtatrabaho ang DepEd, ang CHED at ang TESDA kasama ang inyong Kongreso at Senado para masimulan ang mga pagbabago at reforma para pagandahin ang ating sistemang pang-edukasyon. Halimbawa, sa ilalim ng DepEd, may malaking pondo para sa in-service training ng ating mga guro, school administrators at non-teaching staff. Idinidiin din ng ating panukala na dapat mapunan ng DepEd ang mga vacant positions nito sa teaching at non-teaching positions bago mag-December 31, 2023. Para din masimulan ang trabaho nito para aralin ng masinsinan ng estado ng ating sistemang pang-edukasyon at repasuhin kung kinakailangan ang mga nauukol na batas. Minabuti po ni Vice Chairperson Gatchalian na may sapat na pondo para sa pangalawang Congressional Commission on Education or EDCOM 2. At sa tulong po nila Senior Vice Chair Cayetano at Vice Chair Gatchalian, sinigurado na may pondo na magagamit para sa mga textbooks at instructional materials para sa mga learners with disabilities. Nagpasok din po ng pondo sa Early Childhood Care and Development or ECCD Council para sa pagtayo ng mga National Child Development Centers or NCDCs. May dagdag na pondo rin para sa National Book Development Board para sa iba't ibang proyekto at programa nito tulad ng Book Nook, Children's Book Summit, participation in international book fairs and trade engagements, Creative Nation Grant, Publication Grant, at translation subsidies. Mr. President, the return to face-to-face classes is among the clearest signs that the return to normalcy is near. But this should not mean a reversion to complacency. Your committee has taken steps to ensure that as the economy opens up, we continue to strengthen our healthcare system. For instance, while there is an abundance of COVID-19 vaccines currently in the country, your committee has affirmed that funds will be available for the purchase of vaccines for COVID-19, possibly even for monkeypox and other emerging diseases. We have also ensured that funds will be available for public health emergency benefits and allowances of our healthcare workers. The work of building up our healthcare system should now resume in earnest, and we will do that with the significant funding for PhilHealth and for the entire Department of Health, up to 315 billion pesos. We worked with Senior Vice Chair Pia Cayetano to provide funding support to the operations of various DOH regional hospitals, specialty hospitals, several health centers, and other programs of the DOH, including Mariano Marcos Memorial Hospital, Baguio General Hospital and Medical Center, Batangas Medical Center, Bicol Regional Hospital and Medical Center, Bicol Medical Center, Western Visayas Medical Center, Vicente Soto Memorial Center, Eastern Visayas, among others, Mr. President. It's a long list of hospitals. We've also worked to help increase the carrying capacity of the colleges of medicine across different SUCs, including UP Manila, and those with nursing and allied health programs. We also provided funding support for state university and colleges with pending applications for medical programs and lodged resources within CHED as a seed fund for development of more medical schools in state universities and colleges. Medical scholarships under the Doktor para sa Bayan were also funded, a pet measure of our majority leader and Senior Vice Chair Cayetano. We agreed that improving our infrastructure is key to the economic transformation the administration aims to achieve. This is why we are glad that the Build, Build, Build program of the previous administration will continue in the next 6 years as the Build Better More initiative, which will help drive economic growth. Your committee retained the increase of the appropriations for development and rehabilitation of various airports across the country under the DOTR. Funding has also been affirmed to boost the safety capacities or capabilities within our maritime sector and to continue the improvements in our railway system, which covers such projects as the MRT-3 Rehabilitation Project, the LRT-1 Cavite Extension, the North-South Commuter Sub-Railway System, the Philippine National Railways South Long Haul Project, and the Metro Manila Subway. Road transport and the pedestrian network will also receive support, such as in the EDSA Busway Project, the EDSA Greenways Project, and even the stalled Cebu BRT Project. The support for building up systems for active transport like bicycles and safe pathways will also continue. The committee has also affirmed the increases in the funding under the Network Development Program of the DPWH for road widening projects, for paving rough roads, for the construction of diversion roads, missing road links, flyovers, interchanges, underpasses, and the like. The Bridge Building and Improvement Program will also receive significant funding. Packages of priority road projects under the Convergence and Special Support Program will also be funded extensively that are consistent with the plans and strategies of agencies like NEDA, DOT, DTI, and the DND. Bilang suporta sa ating ekonomiya, nakatuon din ang komite sa pamumuno ni Vice Chairperson Mark Villar sa mga programang tutulong sa ating MSMEs or Micro and Small Medium Enterprises. Sa ilalim po ng DTI, tuloy pa rin ang One Town, One Product or OTOP Next Gen, ang shared services facilities, ang pagtayo ng mga negosyo centers, ang Rural Agro-Enterprise Partnership for Inclusive Development and Rapid Growth, ang Malikhaing Pinoy Program bilang suporta sa pag-implementa ng bagong Philippine Creative Industries Development Act or RA 11904 at ang pondo para sa pagbabago at pag-asenso program na pautang sa ating mga MSMEs. Mr. President, many throughout the pandemic discovered that with a stable internet connection, they could earn a living as part of the gig economy from the comforts of their home. To support this growing online freelancing industry in the Philippines, our proposal also affirms funding for several upskilling and reskilling initiatives. For instance, the DICT has several initiatives focused on building up the country's digital workforce and laying the groundwork for our ICT industry to further develop. Such programs include 182 million for its digital workforce program, which includes the formulation of ICT competency standards, the development of a Philippine competency framework, digital literacy training, and government information officer scholarships. Funds for ICT workforce upskilling and reskilling, funds for ICT industry development programs, including the establishment of ICT councils and capacitating more LGUs to become digital cities. Funds for Digital Jobs PH, which covers trainings for MSMEs and out-of-school youth, and funds for the establishment of Tech for Ed hubs and digital transformation centers, which will serve as community ICT resource centers for select LGU beneficiaries. Sinusuportahan din natin ang panukalang digital transformation ng ating gobyerno para mas mabilis at mas mabisa itong makapaghain ng serbisyo sa taong bayan. Nangunguna po dito ang DICT na may e-government program kung saan tinutulungan niya ang iba't ibang ahensya para gawing digitalisado ang kanilang mga proseso. Kasama dito ang paglunsad ng IBPLS o ang Integrated Business Permits and Licensing System sa mas maraming LGU para mas mabilis silang makapag-issue ng business permits, building permits at ibang permit. Napapaloob din dito ang pagbuo ng mga sistema para makagamit ng mga digital payment systems ang ating mga LGU. Bukod dito, tuloy-tuloy ang National Government Data Center Infrastructure Project na magsisilbing common launching point para sa mga ahensya ng gobyerno tulad ng web hosting, server co-location, network connectivity at iba pa. Tuloy-tuloy din ang pagsigurado ng DICT na bawat sulok ng bansa ay konektado sa internet sa pamamagitan ng National Broadband Plan at ng Free Internet Access Program. At sa rekomendasyon ng ating Vice Chair, Senator Grace po, naglagay rin tayo ng special provision para bigyan ang DICT ng kakayahan para makapagbigay ng insentibo sa mga LGU community service providers na pwedeng mag-develop at mag-finance ng mga tinatawag na last mile facilities sa mga paaralan, resettlement sites, transport hubs, at iba pang mga public spaces. Another major priority of the administration is the reopening of our tourism industry, which was among the hardest hit throughout the pandemic. The country now faces an auspicious opportunity to relaunch its beautiful sites and destinations to the rest of the world. This is why in the President's budget message, it was underscored that the branding campaign for Philippine tourism will be revitalized through the initiative of Vice Chairperson Nancy Binay, who also chairs the Senate Tourism Committee. We increased the budgets of several programs of the DOT to ensure that the requisite plans are formulated, the relevant trainings are conducted, the proper standards and regulations are enforced, and attractive tourism products are matched with the appropriate markets. Again, through the help of Vice Chair Binay, additional funds were realigned to support the operations of the 16 regional offices of the DOT, and funds were also set aside for the Intramuros Administration and the National Parks Development Committee. Napakadaming destinasyon ang pwedeng bisitahin sa buong bansa, Mr. President. Pero bukod sa mga ito, makakatulong sa ating turismo kung ganap natin payabungin at ipagmalaki ang ating kultura at kasaysayan o culture and heritage. Kaya nagpapasalamat po tayo kay Senior Vice Chair Pia Cayetano dahil nadagdagan ang pondo ng National Commission on Culture and the Arts, NCCA, ang National Historical Commission of the Philippines, NHCP, ang National Library at ang National Archives. May dagdag na kabuang pondo para sa mga programa ng NCCA tulad ng Centro Rizal, Filipino Heritage Festival, support to creative industries, cultural mapping, Philippine participation at the Venice Biennale, at ang conservation ng Metropolitan Theater. May dagdag na pondo din para pagandahin ng National Museum hindi lamang ang main complex sa Pedro Hill, pati na rin ang mga kabayan, burial caves sa Benguet, ang Rocha House sa Tagbilaran, Bohol, ang Santuario de Nuestra Señora di Sasay sa Taal, Batangas, at ang Fort San Pedro sa Iloilo City. Kapag matapos ang pagsasaayos ng mga lugar na ito, bawat isa sa kanila ay maaaring maging tourist destination. Our proposed budget also follows through on the ongoing drive for local communities to have a more direct role to play in their own development through devolution and decentralization. For next year, the National Tax Allotment, formerly the IRA, or the Internal Revenue Allotment, that will be appropriated to LGUs across the nation will amount to 820.269 billion pesos. Meanwhile, the annual block grant for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is worth 64.756 billion. I know this is close to the heart of our presiding officer. Both figures are smaller than their equivalents in 2022 because of lower tax collections in the previous years during the pandemic. Nonetheless, we are hopeful that they will go directly to the communities that will benefit the most from their use, and these amounts will increase as the country's economy opens up. No less than the President believes this to be true, such that he requested through the DA to include special provisions and specific provisions that ensure the direct release of funds to the BARM to implement the national programs on rice, corn, livestock, high-value crops development, national organic agriculture, and the updating of the registry of agriculture, and as well as for fuel assistance to the fisherfolk. Patuloy din po ang ating tulong para sa mga ahensyang magtatanggol at magproprotekta sa bansa. Halimbawa, dinagdagan sa tulong at liderato ni Vice Chairperson Senator Bato de la Rosa, dinagdagan ang pondo ng DND OSEC para sa iba't ibang pangangailangan tulad ng pagtatag ng 3 bagong opisina. Magbibigay din ng suporta sa ahensya para makalahok at makasama sa mga defense cooperation agreements, at naglaan din ng pondo para sa revised AFP modernization program sa pagtayo ng mga mobilization centers sa Ilocos Region at Central Luzon, sa operational expenses ng forward operating base sa Subic, sa equipment ng data center sa Fernando Air Base sa Lipa City, sa pag-procure ng mga armor vests, ballistic helmets, night vision goggles, at iba pang kagamitan, at pagpapatakbo ng mga bagong barko ng Philippine Navy, gamot ng mga pasyente ng Veterans Memorial Medical Center at para sa National Security Council, Government Arsenal, Office of Civil Defense, maging sa OPAP or Office of the Presidential Advisor on Peace and Reconciliation. Nagbuhos din tayo ng suporta para sa proyekto at programa ng mga law enforcement agencies tulad ng panukalang Anti-Drug Operations Command Center ng Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency o PDEA, ng bagong headquarters building ng Philippine National Police, at ng digitalization at civil works ng National Bureau of Investigation or NBI. Dinagdagan din po ang pondo para sa Supreme Court at mga korte para sa hazard pay ng mga lower court judges at sweldo ng mga trial judges at large at 50 trial judges at large. Ganito rin ang ginagawa para sa Sandigan Bayan sa CA or Court of Appeals at Court of Tax Appeals as well as for the Office of the Solicitor General para sa sweldo at benepisyo ng mga prosecution attorneys. Mr. President, we also hope to support our diplomatic corps so that they can project a better image of the Philippines and that we as a nation can play a bigger role in world affairs. Significant funding as contributions will be set aside as contributions to international organizations for the hosting of regional or international conferences. We also augmented the DFA's budget for the commemoration of the 125th anniversary of the proclamation of Philippine independence, for our participation in the Osaka Expo in 2025, and for the promotion of Philippine specialty and heritage products and crafts. Mainly through the intervention of Senior Vice Chairperson Senator Lauren Legarda, we have made additions to the Philippine Studies program of the DFA as well as part of its diplomacy program. Patuloy din po natin aalagaan ang ating mga overseas Filipino workers o OFWs, lalong-lalo na may naitatag na bagong department, ang DMW or Department of Migrant Workers. At sa pamumuno po ni Vice Chairperson JV Ejercito, nagtulungan ang komite na para suportahan ang bagong DMW para sa operasyon ng mga regional offices nito at ng OFW Hospital at para makapag-hire ng dagdag na overseas employment adjudicators at makapagbukas na dagdag na migrant workers offices na dating tawag ay POLO o Philippine Overseas Labor Offices. At sa rekomendasyon naman po ni Vice Chairperson Francis Tolentino, dinagdagan natin ang pondo ng Commission on Filipinos Overseas para makalahok sila sa mga activities ng Interagency Council Against Trafficking o IACAT at may dagdag na pondo rin para sa Overseas Workers Welfare Administration o OWA. Mr. President, our proposed budget also makes good on our commitment to preserve our environment and to pursue a sustainable form of development for the benefit of future generations. For instance, work will continue for the rehabilitation of Manila Bay, of Boracay Island, and 5 so-called green economy models or GEMs, namely Puerto Galera, Coron, El Nido, Siargao, and Panglao. The DNR will be able to pursue its work on biodiversity conservation, coastal and marine ecosystem management, clean air and water, solid waste management, and responsible mining. Through the leadership of Vice Chairperson Cynthia Villar, we have included additional funding for the construction of 15 storage facilities in various CENROS or Community Environment Officers worldwide, nationwide offices for the National Land Titling Program so that we will have consolidated cadastral maps and land tenure profiles and better land records management overall, and for the hiring of more forest protection officers and the construction and repair of storage facilities used for the intensified forest protection and anti-illegal logging activities of the government. The budget also aims to plant the seeds for our future sources of development and prosperity by supporting initiatives focused on science, technology, and innovation. For instance, the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, will be receiving more funding this year for the implementation of the Philippine Innovation Act, and these funds will be used for the Secretariat Services of the National Innovation Council, and the lion's share will go to grants for innovation programs and activities. And again, through the interventions of Vice Chairperson Francis Tolentino, the DOST and its attached agencies will also receive more funding. And so will the Philippine Space Agency, or PhilSA, for it to continue working for more Filipino-built satellites to be put into orbit. And again, in collaboration with Senior Vice Chair Pia Cayetano, we ensure that all SUCs will receive additional funding for research and innovation programs, particularly those focused on futures thinking. Paigtingin pa natin ang suporta para sa ating mga atleta, lalo na't patuloy na umarangkada at nananalo pa rin sila sa mga international sports competitions. Sa tulong po ni Senior Vice Chair Cayetano, makakatanggap ng dagdag na pondo ang National Academy for Sports sa pamamagitan ng National Sports for All Grassroots Centerpiece Program ng Philippine Sports Commission. Ito ay para sa mga programa ng NAS at para makapagbigay ng mga scholarship grants at expenses subsidies. Sa tulong po ni Vice Chairperson Bongo, nais nating maglaan ng dagdag na pondo para sa Philippine Sports Commission bilang suporta sa ating mga national athletes na nag-iensayo para sa Paris Olympics, sa Southeast Asian Games, sa Asian Indoor Martial Arts Games, sa World Combat Games, sa World Beach Games, sa Asian Beach Games, sa ASEAN Para Games at sa Asian Para Games. Dagdag po nito, may pondo ang gobyerno para suportahan ang pag-host ng bansa ng FIBA World Cup sa darating na taon. Sa gitna ng kalulalulang mga numero sa budget, na hitik sa mga zero, mas mainam sigurong balangkasin on a daily basis. How much the government will spend and borrow every day next year gives a much clearer picture of the huge funding gap which must be plugged by our borrowings. On a daily basis, the government will be spending 14.4 billion pesos, of which only 10 billion is supportable by revenues. The 4.4 billion is the deficit that must be financed by debt. Yan ang patak ng metro natin kada 24 oras. Bago lumubog ang araw, kailangan makalikom ng 7.2 billion pesos. At bago sumikat naman, dapat makakamada ng 7.2 billion muli. These numbers are easy to memorize and they should be a sobering reminder that against many requests being asked of the government, that there are no only resources to fund them. Ganong kahalaga ang pagpapalakas ng ekonomiya at ang budget ay isang instrumento sa pagkamit nito upang ang sigla nito ay magdulot ng trabaho at buwis. All of the above call for smart budgeting, where nothing is wasted or delayed in budget execution, when the hope and promise these appropriations bring is waylaid by procurement anomalies. Smart budgeting is what your committee has endeavored to do, at para dito taos puso kaming nagpapasalamat sa inyo, Mr. President, Senate President Miguel Zubiri, Senate President Pro Temp Loren Legarda, Majority Leader Senator Joel Villanueva at Minority Leader Senator Coco Pimentel. At salamat din sa ating mga kasamahan sa komite, Senior Vice Chairpersons Pia Cayetano, Amy Marcos, Loren Legarda, at Vice Chairperson Cynthia Villar, Bato de la Rosa, Win Gatchalian, Bongo, Risa Ontiveros, Nancy Binay, Grace Po, Francis Tolentino, Mark Villar, JV Ercito. At syempre sa iba nating kapwa-senador na nagsipag kahit nung panahon ng break, sila Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, Francis Chis Escudero, Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada, Lito Lapid, Robin Hood Padilla, Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. at Rafi Tulfo. Lahat po sila ay pumunta at nagtanong sa mga hearing at pinaganda ang takbo ng ating budget process. Lumahok po silang lahat kaya on time po tayo sa paghahain at schedule nitong panukalang budget, Mr. President. Nagpapasalamat din ulit tayo sa Senate Secretariat, sa LBRMO, kay Director Palangka, Irene Palangka at kay Attorney Yoli Doblon para sa kanilang tulong. At napapaloob sa panukalang budget ang mga plano natin para sa mga susunod na taon. Taglay niya ang mga pangarap natin para sa isang mas magandang bukas para sa lahat. Noong nakarang kampanya, napalakas ang sigaw ng sambayanang Pilipino na bagong Pilipinas, bagong mukha. Dinidinggin po natin ito, kaya sa pamamagitan ng panukalang budget, pinapakita na handang tumulong ang Senado para magkatotoo ang hangarin na ito. Siyempre, hindi masusolusyonan ang mga problema ng ating bansa agad-agad. Kailanman hindi ito magagawa sa isang buwan o isang taon lamang o kaya marahil sa isang administrasyon lamang. Ngunit mahalaga na ang proseso ng pagbabago ay nagsisimula at patuloy na po. Papasok na nga ang kabanata kung saan sama-sama tayong babangon muli. Napapaloob sa ating panukala ang mga unang hakbang. Maraming salamat, Mr. President, at mga ginagalang nating mga kasamahan.
Thank you, Senator Sani Angara, the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Finance. I was told that the next to co-sponsor the measure is the Senate President Pro Temp, no other than Senator Loren Legarda. Senator Legarda, you are recognized.
Mr. President, with the permission and support of the chair, the hard-working chair of the Finance Committee, Senator Sani Angara, I respectfully request my fellow senators' consideration of the 2023 budgets of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Labor and Employment, which includes the Technical Education Skills Development Authority, TESDA. The past 2 years have been challenging for many of us. The COVID-19 pandemic brought the world to an unprecedented level of societal disruption. The world was faced with enforced lockdowns, restricted movements, prohibition on traveling. With the global economy at a standstill, industries were devastated, millions of jobs were lost. As of November 7, 2022, the virus has affected more than 4 million individuals, claimed the lives of more than 64,000. The country's poverty incidence also rose to 23.7% in the first half of 2021 from 21.1% in the same period of 2018. Gross domestic product fell by the worst contraction of GDP since World War II, falling by 9.5% in 2020. At the onset of the pandemic, the Philippine government responded with a four-pillar socioeconomic strategy against COVID. Fiscal measures which provided emergency support for vulnerable groups, which included Bayanihan 1, 2, the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, the CREATE, the monetary and macro-financial measures to gather resources to fight COVID-19, monetary actions to keep the economy afloat, other financing support for emergency response and recovery initiatives, and an economic recovery program to create jobs and sustain growth, which waived certain permits, licenses, or other requirements to fast-track high-impact investments and create jobs. As we overcome this health crisis and implement economic relief measures, we prepare to provide essential funds and protect livelihoods in the face of abrupt income losses. The subcommittee report aims to promote security and build back better by assessing measures that focus on potential targets for stimulus spending that may offer near-term benefits in terms of job creation and long-term outcomes for sustainability and resilience. For DOLE, which includes TESDA, the subcommittee recommended a 2023 budget of 49.223 billion. Throughout the pandemic, the International Labor Organization reported that in 2020, 1/4 of the total employment in the country, or about 10.9 million workers, would face prolonged job disruption. In September this year, the labor force survey of the Philippine Statistics Authority showed that the unemployment rate stood at 5%, or 2.50 million unemployed Filipinos, with 18.1% of the population, or around 19.99 million Filipinos living below the poverty threshold. With the prevailing challenges in the economy, a 7.7% inflation rate in October 2022, and a 13.517 trillion debt as of September 2022, the DOLE contributes through various interventions such as employment, training, livelihood to fortify the capacity and income earning ability of individuals and families. These include immediate policy responses that can help ease the financial burden accompanying reduced work hours and help sustain household consumption. These responses also ensure basic social and economic protection during the crisis and recovery phases. The recommended budget allocation of DOLE is as follows: 27.252 billion, Office of the Secretary; 55.586 million for the Institute of Labor Studies; 275.591 million for the National Conciliation Mediation Board; 1.383 billion for the National Labor Relations Commission; 271.402 million for the National Wages and Productivity Commission; 1.750 billion for the Professional Regulation Commission; 18.236 billion for the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. In the identification of livelihood and emergency employment programs for the Tulong Pangkabuhayan, Panghanap Buhay sa Ating Disadvantaged or Displaced Workers, TUPAD beneficiaries in particular, DOLE shall give priority to the following in the order of preference: indigent families under the National Household Targeting System for Poverty Reduction; informal sector families, those under the next lower poverty level as determined by DSWD, which now includes, as an amendment, indigenous people, agrarian reform beneficiaries, and women who do unpaid care and domestic work, as they too may be considered as vulnerable members of society. The DOLE has attained a utilization rate of 95.56%, or 19,408,748,690.92 out of the 20,310,469,636.72 allotments. The unutilized amount of 901,720,945.80 or 4.44% for the implementation of the three regular programs, TUPAD, DOLE, Integrated Livelihood Program, DILIP, GIP, Government Internship Program. It was able to employ 3,008,494 beneficiaries, achieving DOLE's contribution to the government's agenda of inclusive growth through massive job generation and poverty reduction. For TESDA, we distributed a portion of the lump sum amount under the central office to the regional offices to support TESDA to decentralize the funds and improve its rate of utilization of the budget. The distribution of Training for Work Scholarship Program, the Special Training for Employment Program, the Tulong Trabajo Scholarship Program, and the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education takes into consideration the regional underemployment, unemployment, job vacancies, absorptive capacity, poverty incidence, number of scholars, and other criteria to ensure equitable distribution among regions. TESDA is in a leading position to help the government improve the lives of the poor and reduce poverty in the country. Through TESDA, government agencies and private organizations collaborate in providing training packages that complement and address the needs of a community. The introduction of innovative ways to enhance skills and provide additional learning is consistent with TESDA's objectives of social equity for workforce inclusion and poverty reduction. From 2018 to September 2022, TESDA has had 7.68 million technical vocational education and training or TVET enrollees, 7.13 million TVET graduates, 93.1% certification rate. At the beginning of the pandemic, PSA reported that unemployment peaked at 17.7% in April 2020, with 7.3 million Filipinos out of the workforce. The following year, in August, the unemployment rate improved to 8.1% or equivalent to 3.88 million people. However, the Asian Development Bank observed that while the rate of unemployment has improved, low-quality jobs are emerging. The increasing number of self-employed individuals and people in the informal sector was deemed to be less stable. The pandemic has affected 1.7 million wage and salary jobs in private establishments, whereas unemployment or employment in the informal sector rose to about 435,000. My dear colleagues, it is within our mandate to enact a policy that will address the intergenerational poverty that has become a major constraint in achieving sustainable growth and the overall development of our country. It is imperative that in support of the budget of DOLE and its attached agencies, we ensure that we determine the root causes of problems in labor in order to identify appropriate solutions. To the Department of Foreign Affairs in its budget, the subcommittee submitted the 2023 budget of the DFA at 20.48 billion pesos, an additional 181.48 million from the 20.30 billion proposed budget in the gap. The COVID-19 pandemic has also shown the value of international cooperation and collaboration. The many ties between nations create collective health risks that are difficult to manage independently. The economic and social costs are further evidence of a shared fate. Agreeing on global rules and standards supports consistency of information, helps promote effective practices, forms the basis for shared understanding and mutual trust. The interdependence of trade and travel exposes mutual vulnerabilities. So it is essential to emphasize that cooperation at various levels, bilateral, regional, international, is crucial to effectively allowing nations to enhance alert systems, data sharing, research, as well as production and distribution of medical and public health countermeasures. We also face national, regional, and global security issues such as increasing challenges brought about by climate change, ongoing conflicts around the world, as well as global economic challenges. The DFA is realizing the country's foreign policy objectives by preserving national security, promoting economic security and cultural diplomacy, and ensuring the safety and welfare of Filipinos overseas. Diplomacy facilitated vaccine procurement and secured humanitarian assistance worth approximately 23.409 million US dollars as of September 14, 2022 from international partners. Through DFA, we have gained international support for the arbitral reward on the South China Sea, as well as protection for migrant workers in a campaign to reform the kafala system in Gulf countries and provide assistance to our working kababayans overseas. The DFA was crucial in facilitating the COVID-induced repatriation of 462,065 overseas Filipinos, the provision of assistance to stranded migrants and tourists at the height of the pandemic. Even during the ongoing transition to the newly established Department of Migrant Workers, the DFA also assisted in bringing home 451 overseas Filipinos from Ukraine, 70 from Sri Lanka, 350 from Kuwait. It is worth mentioning that the DFA assists the needs of our migrant workers in instances where the presence of the Office of DMW is not yet available. The DFA continues to extend appropriate assistance to overseas Filipinos in distress through the Legal Assistance Fund and the Assistance to Nationals Fund. Colleagues, men and women of the DFA, some 2,866 strong, serve as the representatives of the Philippine government abroad, safeguard the welfare of some 10.689 million Filipinos overseas. Thus, I propose that the DFA's 2023 GAB allocation be increased by an additional 181.48 million to augment the needs of the Philippine Studies Program, provisions of consular services, including the issuance of passports, visas, and other consular documents, and the International Commitments Fund. The additional budget will be lodged under the Office of the Secretary. We have forged partnerships with several countries like Spain, Germany, Singapore for the Philippine Studies Program, and these provide access to other nationalities to study Philippine culture and society. The proposed budget allocation of the DFA is as follows: OSEC from 20.175 billion to 20.3 743 million for UNESCO, Philippines, 37.251 million for the Presidential Commission for Visiting Forces. My dear colleagues, let us support the budget of DFA to strengthen its position for the protection and promotion of the interests of the Filipino people around the world. With that, I humbly ask for plenary consideration of the 2023 budgets of the Department of Foreign Affairs, the DFA, the Department of Labor and Employment, the DOLE, including the Technical Education or TESDA. I earnestly hope that these will merit the approval of this august chamber. Of course, my gratitude to the leadership of this chamber, Senate President Miguel Zubiri, and the very hardworking as well Majority Leader, and all the vice chairs and the members of this chamber. Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I am grateful to the chair of this committee for giving us the opportunity to help in this gargantuan work. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our Senate President Pro Tempore for her sponsorship speech.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, move that we recognize the Senior Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Finance, no other than the distinguished lady from the city of Taguig and Pateros, Senator Pia Cayetano. I move that she be recognized, Mr.
Senator
President.
Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to co-sponsor the 2023 budget as the Senior Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Finance, in charge of the budget of the following: Department of Health and its attached agencies and corporations, Department of Education and its attached agencies, the Commission on Higher Education, state universities and colleges, cultural agencies, and the Development Academy of the Philippines. I won't go into details on the budgets I handled as chairperson because our chairman has already highlighted many of them. Suffice it to say, we sought to future-proof and use strategic foresight to uphold intergenerational fairness and to be prepared for whatever challenges lie ahead, because we do live in a VUCA world. VUCA meaning volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We heard the agencies using the lens of futures thinking and the SDGs as the main blueprint and guide to help attain the different goals for a more sustainable and prosperous future. And although the agencies whose budget this representation heard were those on health, education, and the cultural agencies as mentioned above, as your senior vice chair, we sought to participate in other hearings and will continue to do so in the plenary debates using the same lens that will ensure intergenerational fairness. Naturally, we are guided by the Constitution. Article 14, Section 5, Paragraph 5 provides that the state shall assign the highest budgetary priority to education and ensure that teaching will attract and retain its rightful share of the best available talents through adequate remuneration and other means of job satisfaction and fulfillment. With studies showing that learning poverty in the Philippines is real and the detrimental effects of not being in the classroom for almost 2 years due to the restrictions imposed because of COVID, both in basic education and at the tertiary level, it is only fitting that we continue to look for ways to support the education sector. On health, Article 13, Section 11 of the Constitution provides that the state shall adopt an integrated and comprehensive approach to health development, which shall endeavor to make essential goods, health, and other social services available to all the people at affordable cost. The continued support for the health sector is reflected in the budget thanks to our chairman. This includes improving facilities for their operations, particularly the delivery of primary health care services, but also the establishment of specialty centers and their operations, increasing the carrying capacity for existing medical state universities and colleges, providing support to those with pending applications to offer medical programs, as well as increasing the carrying capacity of state universities and colleges with nursing and allied health programs. On another matter, UNICEF has reported that the Philippines has 1 million children who have not received a single dose of childhood vaccine. Funding for the hiring of immunization vaccinators will help us prevent a serious outbreak of vaccine-preventable diseases like polio and measles. On a final note, this representation appreciates the chairperson's trust over the years, and we thank the LBRMO and all the staff who worked on the budget. We will be ready to provide our colleagues with answers to their questions in the hope that we can continue to support these agencies. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to distinguished sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano,
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next but not the least is the distinguished gentleman from the province of Davao. I move that he be recognized, Senator Christopher Bongo.
The distinguished gentleman from the great city of Davao, Senator Christopher Bongo, is recognized.
Mr. President, it is my honor to co-sponsor the 2023 budget bill, which provides for much-needed increases in our priority sectors. Public health should be one of our priorities. That is why I would like to take this opportunity to thank Senator Sani Angara, Chairman of the Committee on Finance, and Senator Pia Cayetano, sponsor of the health budget, for increases in the health budget, which I also push for during the budget hearing. As I have said before, the funding provided for health should be treated as an investment. As chairman of the Committee on Health, I commend the inclusion of additional budget for the expansion and strengthening of epidemiology and surveillance systems of the Department of Health, I also thank our colleagues for supporting the additional budget for the Cancer Assistance Fund for cancer treatment assistance. I also note the additional funds given for the hiring of immunization vaccinators to strengthen the immunization activities of the DOH to prevent potential outbreaks of various vaccine-preventable diseases. I also laud the additional budgets for the health facilities enhancement program and the medical assistance for indigent patients program. Natutuwa din po ako na may pagpapatuloy ang pagtatayo ng additional super health centers sa iba't ibang sulok ng bansa sa susunod na taon para ma-improve ang accessibility ng ating health facilities at services. Mr. President, I also particularly thankful for the adoption of the proposed special provision under the PhilHealth budget that shall impress upon PhilHealth the use of the budget line item pertaining to benefit package improvement under Universal Healthcare Act. I am glad that the 21 billion allocated under PhilHealth will be used for increase in benefit packages, including the expansion of free dialysis coverage, mental health outpatient coverage, and the implementation of the comprehensive outpatient benefit package, including free medical checkup. Marami pong lumalapit sa akin at sa mga malasakit centers na nagpapatulong na mabayaran ang kanilang dialysis sessions. Ang gusto nila expand pa ang PhilHealth coverage sa dialysis. Marami din pong nagsasabi na kulang ang natatanggap na benepisyo mula sa PhilHealth, lalo na ngayong nagtataas ang mandatory contribution. Marami din pong takot magpa-check up dahil wala silang pambayad at o dagdag lang sa kanilang gastusin yung pagpapa-check up. Kaya dapat tutukan natin ito at tulungan. Dapat na-discover naman nila yung sakit, malala na ito, too late na minsan. Importante po yung early detection at makapagpa-check up kagad sila. Kaya dapat lamang po maimplementa na po ng buo ang Universal Healthcare Law para maging libre po ang pagpapa-check up. Sa pamamagitan ng inilagay natin na provision, mabibigyan din sa PhilHealth na kailangan nilang taasan pa ang mga benepisyo na ibinibigay nila tulad ng dialysis at palawakin pa ang free medical check-up o comprehensive outpatient benefit package program. This development would enable us to progressively realize universal healthcare in the country and ensure that all Filipinos are guaranteed equitable access to quality and affordable healthcare. I also laud the additional budget for the Overseas Filipino Workers Hospital, which was supported by its sponsor, Senator J.B. Ejercito. Isa po ito sa priority projects ng administrasyon ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte para sa ating mga OFWs at sa kanilang mga pamilya. At soon po magkakaroon din tayo ng malasakit center sa OFW Hospital. Patunay po ito na prioridad natin ang ating mga OFWs. Kaya din talagang isinulong ko ang pagtatag ng Department of Migrant Workers at naisabatas na ito sa pangunguna ng ating former chairman po ng Committee on Labor, ang ating Majority Leader Senator Joel Villanueva, at sa suporta ng kasamahan natin noong nakaraang kongreso, headed by then Majority Leader, now Senate President Migs Subiri. Masaya rin tayo na mayroon ng sariling budget sa susunod na taon ang Department of Migrant Workers. As chairman of the Committee on Sports, I also thank our chairman and the sponsor of the DepEd budget for including the additional budget for the operations of the National Academy of Sports. Isa rin po ang National Academy of Sports sa mga proyekto ng nakarang administrasyon. Bilang isa sa nagsulong nito sa Senado, kasama sina Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Win Gatchalian, Senator Sani Angara, at mga kasama natin sa last Congress, natutuwa po ako na patuloy nating masusuportahan ang ating mga student athletes. Isang paraan itong NAS para masulong ang grassroots sports development, makakapag-training sila at the same time makakapag-aral. Maisusulong din natin ang sports sa ating mga kabataan, imbis na maligaw o malulong sila sa masasamang bisyo. Sabi ko nga, get into sports, stay away from drugs. Lastly, Mr. President, as the sponsor of the budget of the Philippine Sports Commission and the Games and Amusement Board, I also want to commend the Committee on Finance and our colleagues for supporting and adopting the increases in the budget of our sports program. The increases are mostly for the preparation, training, and participation of our athletes to international sports competitions. We also included budgets to international sports competition. We also included budget to support grassroots and community sports development. Patuloy po ang pag-angat ng mga Pilipino sa larangan ng sports sa buong mundo. Kaya sana po patuloy rin po natin silang susuportahan sa ating mga sports program para maengganyo sila na iprepresenta ang ating bansa sa iba't ibang mga palaro. At kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, paraan din po ito na mailayo natin sila sa masasamang bisyo. On that note, I also again thank our chairman of the Committee on Finance, Senator Sani Angara, and all fellow vice chairpersons for coming up with this 2023 budget bill as early as now. I congratulate everyone for the hard work that was put into crafting of this budget and the initiatives of everyone to support our priority sectors. Ang importante, magamit ang budget na ito para sa mga mahirap. Siguraduhin natin na walang magutom at matulungan ang mga helpless, hopeless at mga walang malapitan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat sa ating sponsor, Senator
Salamat.
Bongo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we wish to commend and thank the distinguished senator of the Committee on Finance, Senator Angara, together with his vice chairpersons for the hard work that they have done. We have the scheduled rundown of the agencies to be considered starting tomorrow, Mr. President. And so with that, I will move now that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 4488 under Committee Report number 10. I so move, Mr. President.
There's a motion by our distinguished majority floor leader. There being no objection, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 27th session, Monday, November 7, 2022, and consider the same as approved. So moved.
There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, we take this privileged speech up, and I ask that we recognize the distinguished lady from Taguig, Pateros, no other than Senator Pia Cayetano, to deliver her speech.
Our distinguished colleague from the city of Taguig and Pateros is recognized, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm mindful of our time as we are celebrating lips ko, kailangan ng FDA regulation. Powder na may SPF 50. Pinapahid ko lang sa mukha ko, hindi ko inaamoy, hindi ko nilulunok, kailangan ng FDA regulation. Sunblock para sa lips, moisturizer and sunblock, kailangan din ng FDA regulation. Hindi ko din iniinom to, hindi ko din nilulunon. Eyeshadow, ganun din, pinapahid ko lang sa mata ko, hindi sa loob, sa balat. And finally, marami, malaki bag ko eh. Alcohol. Okay, alam niyo yan, lahat yan, kailangan ng FDA regulation. Hindi pwedeng mag-claim na pwedeng gamitin sa isang bagay. Kung ano lang saan pwede, doon lang pwede. So ang tobacco products, and itong mga tinatawag na novel tobacco products, hindi basta-basta pwedeng i-promote yan kahit sa mga doktor na nakakabuti. Ang mga doktor natin magagaling. Pero nagre-rely din sila sa mga tinatawag na scientists o mga experts para bigyan din sila ng bagong impormasyon. Yan nga mga bagong impormasyon. Tapos, ang PMI magpapa-seminar or tinatawag na scientific forum at ang mga imbitado ay mga doktor. May kopya ako ng kanilang mga invitation para sabihin yung beneficial effects ng mga e-cigarettes, mga vapes, mga heated tobacco products. Hindi pwede yon, bawal yon. It is unethical, Your Honor. And it is my firm belief that since we are about to discuss the budget, sayang na ang dami sa atin, Senator Bongo just stood up to promote the support for more budget for health. Our chairman, Senator Angara, is trying to find funding to support health. May additional funding pa yon for the health workers that have dedicated their lives, who have risked their lives during the time of COVID, well, the height of COVID. May utang pa tayo sa kanila, di ba, Senator Angara? Bilyon ang utang natin sa kanila, tinayaan nila yung buhay nila. Tapos eto tayo, with one hand, naghanap ng pondo para tulungan ng health, and with the other hand, pinapabayaan natin itong mga seminar na to na gumagawa ng health claims na wala namang permiso sa FDA. So yun lang sa akin, Mr. President, because this Congress, this Senate, the previous Senate, passed the vape law, which happily includes a provision that says na bawal gawin yon. So hindi natin dapat payagan na gawin nila yun. Trabaho ba natin yon? Hindi. Trabaho ng FDA at ng DOH yan. But it is my job to bring it to the attention of the body para sama-sama naman tayong manindigan na hindi tayo pwede ng ganyan. Hindi pwede yung kabataan, hindi pwede yung mga Pilipino pinagbobobol at niloloko na dinadaan pa sa doktor ang information na ito na hindi ho tama. Let me end with a few other visuals. Ayan, tingnan nyo naman please, my dear colleagues. Ang nasa ad na ito, because the journal does not have pictures, why not nga naman, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, dapat yung journal natin may pictures, di ba? Because I don't know if I have the capacity. I am not like Senator Robin Hood Padilla who is there, who has the ability to explain very well in words, no, yung nakikita niya. And hindi ko alam kung kaya kong gawin yun, but I will just describe. Ito po ay mga advertisement na ang bida doktor, o at least mukhang doktor, na pinopromote ang sigarilyo. O di ba ngayon medyo nasya-shock tayo, wow talaga ha, gumamit pa ng doktor to promote cigarettes. But this is how it was maybe 50 years ago, Your Honors. Doktor, dentist ang ginagamit. Guess what? O ngayon, fast forward, ganun pa rin ginagamit nila. Doktor ngayon ang gusto nilang bolahin para doktor din ang magpo-promote ng vapes and e-cigs. It's the same story. Huwag naman tayo magpabola. Ngayon, shock tayo. With all due respect, I try to be a responsible chairman of the Committee on Sustainable Development and Futures Thinking. So let's put ourselves 50 years from now. Diba, titingnan din natin yung ads na ang kasama doktor na nagpo-promote ng vapes and e-cigs. Sasabihin din natin, ha? Ganon? Pumayag tayo na ganon? So ngayon pa lang, samahan nyo naman ako na sabihin na hindi tayo papayag ng ganyan, na nagpapaseminar in the guise of scientific forum. In fact, Your Honors, yung isang invitation nila, let me read the details. Sabi pa, it's an oncology-focused event. So oncologist pa, mga specialist pa ng cancer ang mga inimbete nila para sabihin mag-vape na lang yung mga pasyente nyo. Tama ba yon? Hindi tama yon, Your Honor. So on that note, let's celebrate our anniversary. And be united in fighting the good fight. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Naisingit mo ko sa masikip nating schedule. And thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Pia, and I would just like to put on record that I commiserate and share the sentiments of our dear colleague, because a lot of young people are thinking, unfortunately, because of false news, fake news, na okay lang or hindi naman masama, healthy naman ang vaping, Mr. President. So I joined the distinguished lady from Taguig, and I moved that the speech of the distinguished lady, Senator Pia Cayetano, be referred to Committee on Health and Demography. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we suspend the session until 10 o'clock in the morning of Wednesday, November 9, 2022. So move, Mr. President.
Just a reminder to our colleagues, before we act on the motion, we will start the budget deliberation at 10 a.m. tomorrow and every day thereafter, except I believe we're keeping Friday open just in case we extend. But definitely, let's keep our Friday next week also
Yes.
open. Because if we have to finish everything on time next week.
And those who have enlisted, Mr. President, to ask questions will be called, and if they are not around, we will proceed,
To
Mr.
pass
President.
the budget
To
of
pass
the
the
different
budget,
departments, yes.
Thank you.
So with that, there being no objection, session is suspended until 10 o'clock in the morning of Wednesday. Sorry. It's suspended. Suspended for 1 minute. There's been no objection, session suspended until 10 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday, November 9, 2022.
Thank you.
I'll all see you at the National Museum.
Thank you,
Buhay
Mr.
po.
President.